everyone. Welcome to Hyperspace on Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening, and a special thank you to webmaster and producer Keith Rowland. And my special guest this evening is Betsey Lewis. And Betsey Lewis, author, internationally renowned psychic medium, talk radio host, and Earth Mysteries investigator, inherited the gift of prophecy from her mother. For over 40 years, Betsey has investigated UFO sightings, cattle mutilations, angels, aliens, and other Earth mysteries. She practices Reiki, Kriya Yoga, astrology, tarot, numerology, and regressive hypnosis. In the past 10 years, Betsey was mentored by Native American ceremonial and spiritual leaders on the natural way of life. She provides psychic readings for an international clientele. And her websites are www.betseylewis.com, and she's on blogtalkradio.com/Rainbow Vision, and she has several books on Amazon.com, Communicating with the Other Side, True Experiences of a Psychic Medium, Mystic Revelations of 13, The Key to Earth's Destiny and Angels, Aliens and Prophecy 2, The Angel Aliens Agenda, and Betsey has a new book out called Earth Energy, Return to Ancient Wisdom, which we'll be discussing this evening. So please welcome Betsey to the show tonight. Betsey, how you doing?
Oh, great. Hi, Solaris. Great to be back on your show. Thank you for that great intro, too.
Oh, my pleasure. It's an honor to have you back. Gosh, I missed you. So
I missed you, too.
How have you been?
Oh, great. And so busy. Been working on weekends trying to finish up my book. And now that it's out, I can kind of, relax a little bit, just for a little while anyway.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I love the hard copy you sent to me. And I just got started reading it, and it's fascinating. Of course, and the cover, like I said before, is just absolutely gorgeous. So let's get into talking about this book. And how long did it take you to write this? You just cranked this one out.
Oh gosh, well, it's taken about 6 months, 7 months, and it's taken a while. Thank you.
It's not bad at all, considering the size. That's pretty darn good. So it sounds like you were really driven to get this going. So what actually sparked your interest in going this direction?
Well, I've always been into earth, nature, and the elements, and I've always believed that everything is connected. I grew up with parents that love the outdoors. We were camping all the time. We would go hiking. We were in northern Nevada. My father had mining property up there, and we'd spend a lot of time in the area, backwoods and everything. There was nature around us all the time, animals, incredible animals. And then when I was 11 years old, my parents bought this beautiful lake resort in the Snake River Canyon, and I would live in the water. I hiked. I went up to the upper lakes there. We had horses. We had sheep for a while, believe it or not. Where there was ducks. There were just all kinds of animals. We had the horses, like I said, and cats, dogs, everything. So it was a menagerie down there, and it was great growing up. Yeah.
That sounds like it. Well, you write in your Earth Energy that you were aware of special energy in all living things as a child. And so how did this awareness come about? How did you tune in? Was it natural, or was it something that really initiated you into that realm?
Well, of course, I didn't really know, the words. There were no words for it at the time for me, but I loved animals. I've always loved animals, and I know you're an animal lover too. You have a cat or cats, right?
I have a dog and a cat.
And a cat. Okay, so do we, yes. And, I've always seen this connectedness to everything, the animals. I would watch, when I was little, I would watch ants. And, when the storms would come up, I'd watch how they would, go underneath, tunnel underneath, they'd go out, and everything seemed to be alive, just amazingly. And so I just totally connected to it. And of course, when I had kind of a turbulent teenage life, my parents were fighting all the time. So when I went to nature, I would kind of meditate. I would go up and hike to a boulder or something, sit on it and watch the sunset. I'd watch the birds. I'd listen to the birds. And so there's that awareness. And as I got older, I started investigating more. I started reading more. And then during the 90s, I started attending powwows and vision quests and sweat lodges with Native Americans throughout the West and the Northwest. And I met two incredible spiritual leaders. That's Corbin Harney, who has since passed away, and Ed McGaw, Eagle Man. and I was taught the natural way. Of course, I'm not indigenous, and I'm not a shaman, but I just related to the Native American way and the
Mm-hmm.
indigenous people and what they teach. And you know, they've always had this connection with everything. They've honored everything. They have ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if they cut down a tree, they would talk to it and honor it and ask for its blessing that they could cut it down. Or if they took the life of something that they needed to eat, a deer or something, they would thank it for
Mm-hmm.
giving its life. And, you know, we've forgotten how to do that. We're so involved in our material world that we've forgotten there's a spiritual world too out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, the spiritual world is really what's driving this whole planet. You know, what comes to mind is that everything is based on consciousness, obviously. And when you start having a consciousness effect on the planet, everything's in motion, it's in alignment with spirit. But as soon as that disconnects, I mean, everything becomes very,
Mhm.
very chaotic. So I have noticed that also on this timeline where everything is fragmented, so to speak, and there's a lot of disruption going on. And a lot of that has to do with, the person's personal intention, what they want to do with their
Right.
life, and also their personal disconnect. But yeah, I really resonate with you, and also with the Native Americans, of course, being connected to the star family consciousness, and all of us. I mean, it doesn't really necessarily mean Native American per se, but people who are advanced in consciousness always connect to the star people. They always connect to their celestial heritage.
Right.
Yeah, so
Right.
so I'm glad that you remember that as a
Hmm.
divine being, and obviously there are many of us on this timeline that do remember that as well. It's in our DNA. And I know you mentioned that at the age of 7 you experienced vivid dreams of cataclysmic earth changes.
I
Now, to me,
did.
that's really prophetic, and that's really, I think that, when you look back at your timeline of your childhood and you start seeing where you've been and all the spiritual work that you've done on yourself, and then it starts to emanate outward, and now you're writing the books that are really making big changes in people's psyches, because your books are incredible. I really, really like your
Thank
books.
you.
And I don't
Thank
say that
you.
about everybody. I'm really picky, but I do
Oh,
enjoy your writing, and you have a
oh,
really nice message behind everything on a very higher level of
oh,
spirituality. So
oh,
thank you for doing
wow.
that. But
Well,
what do you,
thank you.
oh, my pleasures. So why do you believe we are now experiencing warnings of the cataclysmic earth shift? Or are we? Or do you think people are just tuning it out?
Oh, no, no, I think we are. We're out of balance. The
Mm-hmm.
whole planet is out of balance. We're out of Ini, which is Ayni. And that's what the indigenous people tell us, that we have lost that balance. In fact, the Australian Aboriginals remember a time when they came from a distant star that was exploding from another planet out there.
Mm-hmm.
And they came to this planet and they saw that the Earth needed protection to help it, the grid. And so they did certain things to help it stabilize. And through the years, look what we're doing. We're taking everything out of Mother Earth. We're taking the oil, the gas, the uranium. We're just depleting her of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just no regard to anything that we're doing. It's so chaotic. And with all these minerals being taken out of her, the whole energy grid is out of balance,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got to get back into balance. You know, the indigenous grandmothers and the elders say that once we get in balance again, once we start honoring earth, once we start respecting earth and getting back to the natural way, there will be less earth changes. But
Mm-hmm.
right now they're all predicting that big things are going to happen, that the
Right.
earth is going to shift.
Oh, absolutely. Well, my take is that a lot of this, especially coming from my background, is that a lot of it's been weaponized. Nature has been weaponized to a point where
Mhm.
that's why we're having these anomalies. That's why we're having all these problems where you have electromagnetic pulse weapons and everything else that's actually deterring the path of natural consciousness, so to speak. So I do resonate with you. I do think that it's important for everybody to be on track on a higher level of consciousness, and also what we call prana, universal life force
Mhm.
energy, where everything
Mhm.
is alive. I mean, it's a 101 thing. Everybody should realize this. And I think we do, but there are other peoples in cabals, whatever you want to call these organizations, that are literally the big puppet masters who are controlling and manipulating and warping and what I call creating these rifts in the fabric of what we are on this
Right.
timeline. So
Right.
the answer to this is, well, and I pretty much have an answer too, but really it's about maintaining higher consciousness and also changing the
Mhm.
grid and changing the timeline to affect positive change. But my
Right.
question to you would be, how would you do that? I mean, is it just a self-preservation thing where people have to do the spiritual work, or is it a group collective?
I think that each individual person out there can start honoring the earth. And, I've had many people say, well, how can one person do anything? I think when we each take care of ourselves, right now we are so out of balance. humans are out of balance. Look at the way we're eating. The foods that we eat are toxic. The medications, the pharmaceuticals that we're being given, that's all going into Earth too. We're overweight. Most of us are obese. We're not honoring ourselves, and everything that we do, we affect the Earth and everything on it. And we've got to realize that connection, that link, we are so linked to everything. We are a part of everything. And that's what we've forgotten, Solaris. We've got to get back to that again and honoring everything, or we're just going to just go out of control. Because when the animals right now, the sea creatures are dying, there's just mass die-off along the coast. I don't know if that's from Fukushima and the radiation, but there's just a huge die-off. And that's what's happening. Everything that we're doing to ourselves, it's being mirrored back to us, from the Earth. And we've just got to get back to trusting our intuition, honoring ourselves. And we can practice just doing ceremony. You don't have to do it the indigenous way. You can go out and talk to the trees. You can talk to the plants. They hear you. They have a consciousness. I know it sounds crazy. And rocks and everything has
Not at all.
consciousness.
It's not crazy at all. You talk to a lot of the ancient elders, I mean, especially in the Asian world. Yeah, everything has consciousness and everything is alive. That's the whole thing. And what I've noticed also is this planet, obviously we know, is alive as well, but other planets are alive too. People look at the solar system, the illusion of, and they think that just the planet itself is a planet, but they don't understand that it's a celestial body with a containment field of consciousness, and it has its own overlay of data, which doesn't have anything to do with Earth. So I think this is very fascinating. Of course, yet these planets, what we call planets, celestial bodies, communicate with each other through another language of which mankind does not know or understand, because he's lost that ancient lineage or that access, in my opinion. So I do agree with you. I think that this is huge, and I've addressed this on so many other shows. But it's nice that you put this all in print. And now I know you've done extensive research with your own psychic abilities, with Earth changes. You're really on top of things when it comes to earthquake. I've never seen anybody in my life track earthquakes like you do.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, it's amazing.
I don't understand where that intuition comes from, but I think something happened when I was very young that, because I had those dreams, those vivid recurring dreams of earth changes, of violent winds, of earthquakes, volcanoes going off, just incredible tsunamis around the world. I've just sensed that. And so many times, I lived in Los Angeles, and it was 1971 when the big earthquake hit there. And for 3 nights in a row, I had a dream of a big earthquake. And I just knew that it was going to hit. I saw in the dream that I would be okay and my family would be okay. And the morning it hit, I didn't have the dream, but I was up earlier and it hit at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I've been shown many, many things. I knew Mount St. Helens when it was going to blow. I kept having dreams of that. And just so many things that I've been told are just intuitive feels. So I know these earth changes are coming. And look what's happening right now. These sinkholes that are forming all over the world. I mean, oh my goodness, everywhere. And we're getting these strange, mysterious booms that people are hearing. And Linda Moulton Howe of Earth Files has been reporting on it. But people all over the country are hearing these strange booms. And they get this shaking. They don't know what it's from. I think it's deep core earth movement. I think that, when you start getting the rocks grinding like that, it's creating a slap above the earth. It's what they call skyquakes. And we're also getting strange flashing lights. I think there's star beings out there watching all these things that are going on, but I think some of it is piezoelectric, which is caused by the crystals in the earth, and when they grind together, they create earthquake lights. So we're getting that. We're getting volcanoes that are starting to awaken too. So we're getting just so many signs. The signs are everywhere,
They certainly
Solaris.
are. Now, with the mysterious booms that are going on, what is their prediction insofar as, or what is their assessment insofar as what they think it is? Is it pretty much what they're thinking is the core Earth movement? Is that what she's
Well,
coming up
they
with? Or?
don't know that. That's just my
Okay, so
my
that's your
theory.
perception of what's going on.
Yeah, it
Well,
is
and
my
also,
theory.
what do you think about the electromagnetic field collapsing? Because to me, I think that's huge insofar as creating a possible effect with these types of
Hmm.
noises that people are hearing. If you're dealing with us losing our quote unquote magnetic field or electromagnetic field, and everything's sort of slowing down, then that would indicate to me, intuitively speaking, that we would slow the spin of the core down to a point where we would probably have some real problems. And of course, I think
Right.
that would also affect the underground and maybe make some strange booms and noises.
Hmm.
But I haven't done a whole lot of research in that. I've tracked Linda Moulton Howe's work a little bit, and of course, I follow your work on the earthquakes because it's fascinating. And also, did you get a kind of a red flag with Yellowstone? A lot of people are starting to keep push with that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen any swarms up there. That's kind of interesting. There's swarms going on in Oklahoma and Kansas, of course. They seem to be getting stronger, and they think that's from fracking. But I think there's more going on. I think, the whole, in certain places, the earth is just being pulled and stretched. And after a while, you know what happens to a rubber band? It breaks, and it's
Mm-hmm.
going to break in a big way. And we're getting swarms up in Lakeview, Oregon, which is close to the Nevada border. So there's something really strange going on. And like that area isn't supposed to be known for swarms. And then Irving, Texas has had all kinds of swarms,
Right.
which places that usually don't have these earthquakes.
Yeah, I remember
So,
seeing that. You posted that. Remember, I mentioned something about the old
yeah,
super collider. But
right,
they
right,
actually disabled that or dismantled it. So, I mean, it's
right.
obviously, but they're firing up CERN again. And I always mention this on my show because that's coming up
Hmm.
around, I think, March, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it's May, but it's coming
Right.
up. So they're going to be firing that up. And of course, I believe that as soon as they start firing that up, there's anomalies big time. It just
Mhm.
changes everything on a
It
very big
does.
scale.
It does. And that's what we're seeing right now. Until we get back into balance, until we start honoring Earth and getting back to the ancient wisdom that our ancestors knew and learned and taught and practiced every day. They didn't have TVs to warn them. They didn't have radios. They trusted their intuition,
Hmm.
and that's what we need to do in these changing times, to get back to Earth, because Mother Earth is going to warn us. The animals are going to warn us. They're intuitive. They're so intuitive.
Hmm.
And
Right. And we had a natural radar at one point in the continuum. And I always
mhm,
mention where, when somebody's about to call you, you can pick up on it psychically. And all of a sudden, you pick up the phone and they're there. So that natural psychic ability where there is no time and distance and the illusion of it's consciousness and motion. And it seems to me, once again, people are distracted by technology. And now the
mhm,
technology has been weaponized by certain areas and covert areas that are literally using it for mass control. So you can see where we're heading in a spiral on that level. But I also see when you talk about our ancient ancestors and our ancient civilizations, to me that represents like what we would say ancient Atlantean celestial heritage. Is basically redefining ourselves as celestial beings and then accepting our avatar design, which includes multidimensional mastery and all the things that you've been teaching and talking about as well, which enables us to move on to the next level because we are the supercomputers. We don't need man's version of supercomputer technology. We have it
mhm,
within ourselves.
mhm.
And I try to remind people of this, but I think they've lost touch. Once again, not only have they lost touch with their celestial heritage and what's the earth and the energies of the earth and the animals, but they're losing touch with their cellular memory and their off-world consciousness, so to speak.
Oh, well said. Well said. I like that. It's look what we're doing to the earth right now. Fertilizers that are going into the rivers that go out to the ocean. We've got the coral is bleaching, what they call bleaching, and it's dying. And that when the coral dies, everything is symbiotic with everything else. And so when one thing is destroyed, something else is destroyed. It's a domino theory.
Hmm.
It starts collapsing. Everything is collapsing right now. Our oceans are dying. Fukushima, I think, is what it's done. We don't know the real effects of it. And radiation, the thing about radiation stays for thousands of years. It doesn't break down. Plastics don't break down for
Hmm.
hundreds of years. And here we are dumping all this stuff into Mother Earth, when we're doing the fracking, all this chemicals and everything are just destroying Earth. And we can't keep this up. there's 7.2 billion people on the planet right now. And, if we continue this and not get back to more of a natural way of life, get away from all of this materialism that we're involved in, we're a throwaway society. We get something and it has a little chip on it or something, we got to toss it. It goes into the dump, right?
Right.
And, I just read an article which just stunned me. Here in Boise, Idaho, where I live, the dump there, they have noticed that the tons of food, edible food that's being tossed because it has an expiration date on it. And people think that if it has an expiration date, they have to toss it, right? Well, it doesn't mean anything. It's not rotten food yet, but yet there's all this edible food that's going into, the earth again.
Right. Well, I must say I'm a stickler for expiration dates myself, but I think there is a shelf life after the expiration date. I'm not sure. So what is your information on that? Oh, where'd you go? Are you there? Oh, dear. Hang on, everybody. I think we lost somebody. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm Solaris BlueRaven, and this is Hyperspace. I'm here with my special guest, Betsey Lewis. Betsey, you with me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, and we're just going to have to... This happened to us last week, by the way, so...
Oh, it did?
I don't know what's going on.
Skype?
I don't know what's happening. But anyways, what we'll do is try to reboot you on Skype during the next break we take, and we'll see if that doesn't work for you. But
yeah, I'm getting back on there again, so yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, so you just kind of got kicked off?
Yeah, and it just froze up on me. It started buffering. I could see it twirling around, but I couldn't get back in there. I couldn't do anything.
Well, you sound okay. The audio sounds good. It seems to me, I'll tell you what, energetically speaking, it could have been a surge of energy or something like that. That's my impression. But you do that, don't you?
I do. I have that happen quite a bit.
I don't know if that's happened to us before, but it did happen last week, which I thought was interesting too. Oh, well.
Wow.
All right. So where were we? What were we talking about?
Oh, my gosh. Where were we?
Let's backtrack.
What's going on with Earth?
Right. The Earth changes and the earthquakes and everything else that's going on here. And, of course, you plugging into all that stuff and a lot of things that are happening. Now, in your book, you write about the basic elements of water, earth, fire, and air. Water having the magical properties, and of course I associate with purification. So can you explain the significance of these and the ions and what they do, and also the intelligence behind what you think they are?
Well, I think, like I said, I think everything has a consciousness, a spirit, and, the indigenous people believe that all elements have deities attached to them, and I believe that there is that consciousness, but there are ions in water, especially moving water is negative charged ions, and those are the good ions. When you get near moving water, the ocean, a river, you feel so relaxed, and I'm sure you felt that too. Mm-hmm. And have you ever noticed that when there are windy days, dry, windy days, people get really irritable? I know when I lived in Los Angeles, the Santa Anas would come up, and people would get really angry, and there would be more accidents. There would just be people arguing, and that's the positive charged ions, which irritate people. And just before a thunderstorm, those positive ions are moving around, and as soon as the rain starts falling, you start feeling better, those negative ions again, and those ions are everywhere. There's a lot of the negative charged ions in mountains too, and that's why so many indigenous people and spiritual leaders have always go to the mountains. The shamans and all, the mountains have all this energy, and that's where they have their vision quests, their visions, and it's just incredible. But water is just so amazing. Here we have so many hot springs, and I know you have them in Colorado. And have you ever just soaked in a hot springs and how wonderful you feel? They're healing.
Yes.
They're very healing.
And I'm also big on float tanks. I'm really big on those. I used to use those a lot on Maui, although, you have the big ocean there, but I preferred the float tanks for some reason or another. But yeah, I'm a firm believer in the water and the healing energies of water, of course. It's associated with that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. And So the indigenous people have always known about these things, and I think that's why they built these huge temples and pyramids, because when you go up to the very top, that energy collects at the top, and there's just so many stories of spiritual leaders that have had amazing vision quests there.
Right, natural vortexes, natural power spots, and of course, once again, it goes into the section of weaponization of the atmosphere and weaponization of those power spots too, because military stakes these areas out, covert intelligence areas do too. Not to go into that area, but literally, you know what I'm talking about. So areas that are very sacred are kind of being mutated to some degree by all the stuff that's going on here. But yeah, going up into the mountains and recharging your battery, totally. And electricity and thunderstorms and lightning, I'm real big on that too, with the Tesla energy, so to speak.
When people try to climb Mount Everest, the people, the guides that take you up, the Sherpas, they tell you to honor the mountain and not do anything that would disrupt anything or be harmful or anything, because it will cause a disaster of some kind. And sure enough, people that don't listen to the Sherpas, terrible things have happened to them on Mount Everest.
Right, so it's kind of like a curse insofar as... I believe that, totally, if you're projecting that kind of an energetic associated with, the planet itself. And, of course, this planet is a living organism, whatever you want to call it. It does know what's going on. And what reminds me is that why is it not, I would be shaking everybody off on this planet so quick if this was going on, if I was the host of this world, if I was the being on this planet. I wouldn't allow this, and so I look at it also. Excuse me. This is a gracious planet to some degree because it's allowing such strangeness and such abuse to go on and on. It's just amazing.
And I think star beings right now are watching this. That's why we're seeing so much activity. People are seeing these great big balls of light in the sky now. They're seeing all kinds of UFOs, and it's amazing that indigenous people all over the world see these things and know that the star beings exist. We're the only ones that are skeptical out there. That they know, and they've encountered them and interacted with them for thousands of years. And I just had a guest on, Dr. Artie Six-Killer Clark, who traveled 12,000 miles to talk to all these indigenous people in Mexico and in the West and Belize and Yucatan, and they all have incredible stories. And all these aliens that have been there, they're all different kinds. Giants, there's blue beings, there are beings that walk backwards, there are the orb beings, but they believe, the Maya believe that they came from planets far away, and they brought their knowledge with them. So I believe that too. I've had some incredible experiences when I was there twice. Spent some time in Belize. It's an amazing place. It really
sounds lovely. Well, it's I always call it meeting your future self to some degree, because you're dealing with multidimensional consciousness in your own design work. And of course, with that comes the aspects of your own multidimensional self, in my opinion, which means that your multidimensional selves, which exist simultaneously in other worlds and other universes, obviously have a connection to off-world intelligence, other species, which doesn't necessarily mean they look like what we look like on this dimension, because it's all based on frequency. Appearance is based on frequency and modulation. And of course, I think that's sometimes when people access these other beings, they're actually looking at a possible future aspect of them, or their celestial heritage, or maybe even a soul aspect of them in another universe. What's your impression of that?
I absolutely believe that. I think there's so many dimensional worlds that coexist with ours that we don't see, that sometimes we interact with them, sometimes they collide, sometimes they just blend together. We can go back into the past. There are people, there's stories of people that are walking down the street in today's world, and the next minute they're back in the 1800s, and they're reliving it like they're there.
Right.
And stories of course, I believe that the star beings are so advanced. They're like maybe millions of years ahead of us, but they seem to be able to go through walls, and anything that's solid to us, they can go right through. They can manipulate time and space.
Right.
And even control our minds. which is kind of interesting.
Well, when you think about it, time and space is just a benchmark of measure anyway. There is no space and space in the illusion of, and then we're dealing with a hologram, which means if we're energy and consciousness, which we are, we can access it. And when we learn to navigate through consciousness, we can go through any illusion of any type of a quote-unquote dimensional space, which, it's really complex, but that's our heritage. What you're talking about is our celestial heritage. And, of course, we've been dumbed down as a civilization. We don't understand that. That's encoded in our cellular structure. And that's something that I've taught ascension for a very long time, and I can tell you point blank that that's exactly what it's about. It's about ascending into that higher level of multidimensional mastery versus the simulation program they're running here on this dimensional space, which is all based on holographic manipulation and mind control to some degree.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's where it gets into these things where you dovetail the two worlds, because you have to transcend technology. You can't just have technology without spiritual awareness and higher consciousness. It doesn't work that way. And we've proven that by taking a look at this world.
You know, I think right now our world is being manipulated by those that want to control us. They always have been, if you want to call them the Illuminati or the Cabal or the elite or whatever. And that's what they're doing right now. They're controlling us through television, through our phones, our cell phones, and everything. You know, there's just so many things that we're very controllable. We really are. Until we awaken to who we really are and the power that we really have, we're going to continue with this, going on with this crazy world that we're in right now.
Right. I'd say they need to learn how to drive their own cars, meaning their own vessels, their bodies.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that they're not necessarily, I don't know if they're necessarily dumbed down these days. Maybe they are now, but I think they were very innocent about what was going on and didn't really give, they didn't pay attention to anything. I don't think they were expecting people to be manipulating them, is my impression. I certainly didn't expect manipulation to be going on in this world. So I suspect that maybe people just were innocent and they just went around thinking this is the way it is because that's the way it's always been, when in fact what it's always been has been based on historical records which have been, edited and censored and of course are not accurate. So.
Well, I think about the new children coming in right now. There are all these children that are so advanced. They have a higher vibrational rate. They are intuitive. They remember past lives. They see spirits. And, of course, usually they don't have parents that understand any of this and try and suppress it. They're frightened of it. The children are frightened. And so they're not being taught the right things. They're not being taught how to honor Earth either. They are not being taught all these sacred knowledge that's out there about the living Earth, the living library out there. We're so, like I said, so in tune to our technology and our materialism that, I feel sorry for the children out there because they don't know these things. If they were taught the right things, it would be a different world right now, I'm sure.
I totally agree with you. Well, that's why it's so important to have role models and spiritual teachers out there, not gurus where you have to worship them, but people who are enlightened enough to teach the language and offer that information, which will awaken them, of course, and kind of shift them into the next or onto the next level of their own evolution, in my opinion. Now you talk a little bit about there are places on this planet where people, ships, and planes obviously have vanished, like the infamous Bermuda Triangle. So do you believe there are vortexes and stargates? I know the answer is yes here, but what do you think they're doing right now? Do you think they've been kind of mutated, like I was talking about before, where they're not being effective, or do you think they're allowing disembodied entities to come in? What do you think's going on?
There's so many different things going on and so many beings that are watching us. I think there's so many species right now that are watching us, and all of them have different agendas. We have some that are helping us right now, celestial beings. We have those that guard us as, just animals, to be experimented on. There's others that, really just don't care. They kind of observe us. I think they might have had more interaction with us thousands of years ago when we were different people. But there's just so much going on right now. And
Yeah. It seems like it, but to me, it seems like mankind is the culprit on a lot of levels with the covert black technology and the misuse of. So I'd like to blame it on extraterrestrials, but I think the majority of what's going on here has been manipulated by people, two-legged, what I call the two-legged subhuman class, I guess you want to call them. But in your research, what have you discovered that might be explaining these mysterious disappearances insofar as, for example, the Bermuda Triangle or other areas? Do you have any, did you come up with any psychic hits insofar as what you think is going on?
I think there are vortexes, and I think that's where a lot of these beings come in, are these vortexes, these stargates. And there are people that can vanish into different time zones. They say that the Maya knew about time travel, and that's where a lot of them went. The Anasazi, who just seemed to vanish. There's just stories right now of people, especially in a lot of these national forests and different places, have just vanished. I was listening to, I don't know what his name is, but he was on Coast to Coast, and he was talking about someone that was climbing a mountain, and he was ahead of somebody else, and all of a sudden he just vanished. Now, whether it's Bigfoot, I don't know. Did he go into a different dimension? I think there could be a lot of possibilities.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think Bigfoot is eating people. He seems to stay away from humans as much as possible. So I don't think that's an explanation, but I do think there are those vortexes out there, and people have vanished in them, especially in the Bermuda Triangle. Some of that could have been pilot error. There could have been bad storms that explain it. There are gas bubbles that come up from the ocean, and when those bubbles come up big, they can pull a whole ship down. They can even cause airplanes to go down, which is one explanation.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me also. When you're talking about people kind of what I call phase shifting, the word comes to mind when people disappear from this dimension to the next. To me, that's phase shifting, and that has to do, in my opinion, in my own research, with modulation and frequency, which means that there's something going on a multidimensional level on this planet that's happening right now where certain levels are peaking and spiking and actually allowing for these slips to come in where people can actually be pulled into another dimensional space. I don't think that's unusual in the sense that I think that once people start to educate themselves in multidimensional consciousness, then I believe they'll be able to do a whole lot of things that are just phenomenal. But I think right now we're having anomalies, and we're having things where the people are getting kind of pulled into these different dimensional spaces. But what's your impression of that?
Oh, I believe so. I think, like the indigenous people say, that we're in the fourth world now, and we're going into the fifth world right now, so everything is shifting into that fifth world, and we're feeling it big time right now. Everybody's feeling it, and it's going to increase. I've been saying this in my predictions. It's on my website. Just go to my websites and click on predictions that these earth changes are going to increase. They are, and they already are. Just watch. Every month it's going to get crazier and crazier. The weather, oh my goodness, the weather is going to be so out of control. And people, especially on the coastal areas, please be prepared. No matter where you live, we're going to be affected in some way by earth changes.
Right. And also your move from Idaho, now you're planning on moving at some point in the continuum. Now, is that something that you're seeing as a red flag? Now, obviously, is it something energetically that you feel it's not a safe area at this point? Or what's your psychic radar telling you?
I think, that's part of it. I'm feeling that. I am feeling that it's time to go to the Four Corners area. That's where we're going to go. And I think there is, I've kind of looked at the geology of certain areas. Now, Idaho will be fine. And what's being predicted is Idaho will feel big movement when the Earth supposedly shifts. But there'll be other safety areas. And I think you have to trust Mother Earth to tell you where to go. The cities are not going to be the place to be if anything major happens. And don't depend on the government or FEMA to help you, because they won't. And they haven't before.
Yeah, if I had my way, I'd be on I think I'd be on a space station off-world just watching everything from a parallax view.
Right.
That's what I want. I don't even think there's a safe zone on the planet, man. I just don't think so anymore. I mean,
Beam me aboard, Scotty.
Oh, I'm telling you. Summon in those ships. Summon them, just get them all over here. Get the good guys here. Yeah, definitely. We're in for a heck of a ride. I always say, get out your surfboard and learn to surf, because that's what we're doing here. We're riding the waves.
And, look at the weather. We've had the droughts, people that are in drought areas, the fires, the forest fires, and people that lost their homes. Sandy, the people lost their homes there. And right now, look at the weather, the huge storm that hit, the nor'easter that hit just recently, the ice, the incredible ice and snow. And it's just it's going to get crazier, everybody. I hate to tell you that. I hate to tell you bad news, but, I knew when I came into this earth, when I was about 7 years old, I knew that there was a reason I had to be here, and I felt that there were going to be I was going to see incredible things in my lifetime about this time. Mm-hmm. I knew it was going to be later in my life, and here we are.
Right.
Here it is.
Yep, exactly. All the confirmation, too. That's what's so interesting about it. Yeah, just hold on for the ride, I guess, is really
right.
Just let's ride it all out, ride the technology out, ride the waves of evolution out, and hopefully we'll all make it, at least on one dimension or the next, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
For certain. Well, go ahead.
You remember Betty Andreessen Luca that had all the UFO alien encounters. She was in the book The Watchers 1, Watchers 2 by Raymond Fowler.
Right.
Well, she was told by the Watchers, these were both the elders and the gray aliens, but it said, our history goes back billions of years of time. Man is so new upon the earth that no human has the right to even attempt to judge what we do. Mm-hmm. We must ensure that the works of man do not pollute space and endanger people of other worlds. Our purpose is to save your world, to save it from what threatens to be suicide, to save it from utter pollution. New weapons will be developed. Man will enter space within the next 100 years. Thus, it is we are interested. Mm-hmm. So, they are concerned about, and supposedly, there's a mysterious force around the Earth, and it's part of the Van Allen belt, but there's more to it. And some think it might be a quarantine for us. That
where does this come from? I mean, as far as has it been measured, or where did you get the information on that one? Is that something you picked up on?
Well, it was in Waking Times magazine by Greg Scott, M.S., mm-hmm. and he cited NASA's recent discovery of what appears to be a force field over Earth, fueling the fire over whether our planet has been under spiritual and physical quarantine, as many have suggested. Mm-hmm. And according to Daniel Baker, director of the Laboratory of Atmospheric and Space Physics, the electron barrier exists in the Van Allen belts, a pair of donut-shaped belts that ring the Earth, teeming with protons and electrons, and the Earth's magnetic field holds the belts in place. The scientists say that these electrons in these belts, which travel at nearly the speed of light, are being blocked by some invisible force that reminded him of some kind of shield used in television series like Star Trek mm-hmm. to stop alien energy weapons from vaporizing starships. So isn't that interesting?
Wow, that's really interesting. And I'm wondering how much of that is ours versus actually an off-world creation, because I know that through my own spiritual work that we don't have any barriers. I mean, we can access multidimensional consciousness. We can access mm-hmm. other dimensional planets and universes, multiverses. So there's no limitation with consciousness. However, physically speaking, I think there's something that's running interference, and I'm wondering how much of that is us using maybe a scalar frequency fence that we've deployed through our own technological warfare. I know we have black satellites and a lot of technology. So I'm always looking now. I'm actually opposite of you on some levels, because when you talk about things that are based on the extraterrestrials, I see it as a manipulation based on covert intelligence programs. So, but I have to point that out to some degree. But I find it very fascinating. I'll have to look at that article you mentioned.
Yeah, it's still on my website. It's on my Earth News One. It's on my website, and just click on the Earth News One blog.
Excellent.
There.
I heard somewhere they said they were trying to get rid of the Van Allen belt. Did you ever hear that?
No.
Yeah, I don't know where I heard that from somebody, but they were trying to come up with some sort of a technological thing where they could actually get rid of it in general. And,
Don't do it.
There's so much weirdness going on. If you give them a toy, they're going to misuse it. That's the kind of way it works here on this world. Oh, my gosh.
It's like we want to destroy everything. Can't we just leave everything alone?
Well,
I mean, it seems whenever we tamper with something, there's always consequences, right? I mean, we make things worse. Think about when we introduce a new species to an area, then it kills off another species, and then something else dies, and, it just goes on and on. Right. I mean, just leave things alone. Mother Earth knows what she's doing. Mother Nature is in perfect harmony and perfect balance, and it doesn't need man to mess everything up.
Right. Well, I get it. I get that they do it because they can. Nobody's stopping them yet. I say
That's
yes.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's stopped.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So we know that the ancient and indigenous people, like you've talked about, have always believed in the spirit world, very in tune with the spirit world, and scientific evidence the spirit world exists. So Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, gave vivid descriptions of Atlantis and Mu while in deep trance. And I know you've done a lot of, you're very familiar with this. So some scholars dismiss Atlantis as a myth. I certainly don't. What did Cayce say about its demise, and why do you think Atlantis parallels our current civilization? And also, do you have a recall? Do you have a connection to that Atlantean timeline?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a lot of questions there. Oh,
it is.
Edgar Cayce, I think, was amazing. He said that when Earth first began, there was Lemuria, and we were light forms that came in, just pretty much energy forms. And in Atlantis was so advanced. They had flying ships, they had submarines, they had everything that we had and maybe even more. And they had the giant crystal. And they were even doing cloning and creating half animal, half humans. So that's where that mythology comes from. That, you know, we have Pan and we have all these strange, you know, half man, half animal beings. They existed. They really did. And they were used as slaves. I mean, we've always had slaves, it seems like, and even Atlantis had their slaves. But there were those, the ones that wanted to help these beings, that wanted to help others, and then there were the ones that wanted to control them. And, of course, the great crystal that controlled everything. And I don't really quite understand, but he described it perfectly. It was maybe something that harnessed the sun and the moon's energies, but it was incredible. And when they started experimenting with this crystal, you know, they used to use it for, you know, just benevolent purposes, to heat things, to run things. They started destroying their enemies and shooting it through the earth. And, of course, that caused all kinds of problems. And there were great upheavals during that time. And many of the people went to Egypt. Some of them went to South America and came up through the Americas. And it was just incredible. But I guess that great mighty crystal is at the bottom of the ocean in the Bermuda Triangle area, and that sometimes gets activated. And supposedly that's an explanation for some of these missing ships and planes.
So is that what he was picking up on, too, the crystal? I know a lot of people have talked about that crystal. Yeah, that's very, very fascinating to me. Well, this whole planet has a crystalline structure. I mean, when you look at it on a very multidimensional level, so it doesn't surprise me to some degree. Do you think we're actually reliving a bleed-through effect of the Atlantean timeline? It seems to me like there's something going on that's almost creating an alternate universe here.
Well, Edgar Cayce said that many of us were in the Atlantean time, and we've come back during this time, and I guess we haven't learned our lesson from Atlantis, because here we are repeating. You know, history keeps repeating until we awaken, and it will
it's
continue.
A loop. Well, you know, it reminds me of a simulation, a computer program where it just keeps going in a loop. And this is why I say the holographic universe and the holographic planet, because everything is like, it's almost like it's a repetitive program that doesn't know when to disengage. And so what I see is that it can be disengaged. It just needs people to be aware of it. Once you put your awareness onto it, you can shift it, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. Oh, you're so right. You are so right. We're caught in a loop.
I don't want to say people are looping.
And how do you get out of that loop? You know?
Break the cycle. You just break the cycle.
Yeah, that's right. Break the cycle. You know, awaken. You know, and it's you know, all of us are going to have to come together sooner or later to create things. Corbin Harney. He was the spiritual leader of the Shoshone Nation, and he said we have to start joining together to pray. We all have to try to keep our Mother Earth clean. And he said that when we come together, we join hands. You know, we build up that energy. And in my new book, I put different prayers in there, indigenous prayers and some that are non-indigenous, but things that we can do to start healing Mother Earth and talking to her. I mean, go out, hug a tree, talk to the tree. I mean, people may think you're crazy, but that's okay, because the tree's going to hear you. Mother Earth is going to hear you. Sit on the ground and talk to her. Send her light. See beautiful light coming down and going into the earth and just healing her. The waters, see the waters. Our planet is so unique. It's so different than any place. And just think of, we're not too close to the sun to burn up. We're not too far away to be a great big ice ball out there. Everything just seems to be perfect here. In this perfect world, we have an ocean, we have fresh water, we have the trees give us oxygen. They take in the carbon dioxide. They clean the air for us, and here we are cutting down forests and trees, and it's I don't know. I just when I think about what's going on, I'm going, come on, let's get it right this time.
What's interesting to me is that you can't tell me they don't know they're doing something destructive. I mean, to me, it seems like a no-brainer, which tells me that there's a deliberate maneuver on this planet to sabotage the world the way we have existed on it and experienced it on the timeline. It's definitely morphing and changing, and I would say not for the better, but I do love you have a sweat lodge prayer in here that's absolutely beautiful. There's another chapter, it's in there actually, where you talk about lightning and sprites, and I want to make sure we talk a little bit about that because I thought that was pretty cool. You were talking about those storms, but the idea of the elementals and actually an intelligent design behind that. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of these, there are a lot of life forms here existing on different timelines and perhaps different dimensional spaces, which I think is, if you're into mysticism at all, you understand that, but a lot of people don't.
Right. And I've had different things happen to me where I have talked to the water spirits and asked them to help me in a situation. When I was rafting, a friend of ours went over in the raft in a different raft, and she was being pulled into this great big huge rapid. It was called 5 Mile Rapid, and she was going to drown. She was being pulled under, and I kept saying, water spirits help her. I was calling on my spirit guides, my angels, and somehow she got out of it and she was fine. But it was amazing because if she would have been carried over that rapids, she wouldn't have made it. There were so many rocks and boulders. I doubt if she would have made it. It was pretty scary. But I've had other things happen, and I've felt that energy, that spirit energy. And I almost thought when I was in Belize, I thought I saw something moving through the water that was really strange. I could see shadows, and it wasn't fish. I knew that wasn't fish. I don't know what I was seeing. And I've had other things that have happened to me, even when I was in Belize. I don't know if I told you this story that my friend and I were at one of the temples, one of the ruins, the Maya ruins, and there was an altar there. It wasn't at the top of the temple, but it was on the ground, and I assumed that it was an altar. And I said a little prayer, but I decided to get on it and act like, I was the maiden or something, and I had him take a picture. And I thought, I'd be okay because I did say a prayer. But we got back to our car, and it felt like someone had stabbed me with a knife into my gut. And I just doubled over in pain. And I knew I was being told, you dishonored us. And I just kept saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I'm sorry. And I said that over and over, and it was gone.
That's wild.
Yeah.
See, my first response to an attack like that would be counter. Because I'm a warrior spirit, that's why. Because if I get attacked by anything, I don't care where it's coming from, I counter it energetically. But that's just me. But that's fascinating. My goodness. I was thinking you're picking up on the psychic imprint of what was going on there. Obviously, when you go to these areas, it activates you to some degree where you're remembering at the cellular level. So that's pretty deep.
Yeah, it was. It was pretty amazing. I learned my little lesson, though. You don't dishonor. There is still spirits that reside, ancient spirits that reside in those areas. And, you just don't play around with them, Even the indigenous people talk about, the spirits that reside there. They know. And,
right. That leads me to believe, when you look at that and then you see what's going on with people and construction of sacred sites, they're kind of terraforming the whole world. It makes you wonder what's going to happen with all those quote unquote spirits or ancient ancestors. I wonder if they've just moved on and there's just an imprint left over, or if there's really some kind of a presence here. Do you think there's an actual real-time presence here, or do you think it's just kind of a residual feed?
I think there's a presence.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Yeah, I think there's a presence. What do you think?
Well, I think there is, and I think there's a lot of manipulation going on with covert technology coming from my spectrum of what I know about it, which tells me that they've weaponized everything. They've weaponized the planet, which means they can create all sorts of deities and create a false representation of something that could be based on a true celestial race, but actually their version of it. But I do think that there are places that, yes, it's kind of like on the Hawaiian Islands. There are areas you just don't go to, and if you do, you make sure you're very respectful because of the ancient celestial energies that are associated there. And I do respect that too. But I do see also that there's this, people are doing construction and sacred sites, and they're just kind of just breaking everything down. So unfortunately, I don't think everybody looks at it like that. They don't walk gently on the world, so to speak.
Well, I think some of the things we're seeing in the sky now are maybe holographic, 3D holographic things that our own government is doing, and you have to trust your intuition. Is it real or is it is it Memorex?
Live or Memorex. That's what they call it too. And with that being said, we're going to head for a break. Everybody, stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're going to be back in 3 minutes. Welcome back, everybody, to Hyperspace on Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven, and I'm here with my very special guest, Betsey Lewis. Betsey, you with me?
I'm here. We'll try it again on Skype.
It sounds
Keep our
good.
fingers crossed.
Right. It sounds good right now. Yeah, definitely. Well, I do love your book, and like I said, I just got started reading it because I just received it yesterday. But I love it, and what I'm reading is excellent. So if there's anything in particular you do want to address in here, there's so many beautiful chapters. I mean, where do you start? It's incredible. So we'll continue on with some other questions. But if there's anything you do want to touch on real quick, just let us know. And also for everybody who wants to purchase your book now, is it on Amazon or is it on CreateSpace?
It's on Amazon and CreateSpace.
Excellent. Perfect.
And Kindle also.
Nice.
So they can decide which one they want.
Beautiful. I always like hard copies myself.
I do too. I'm old-fashioned.
Me too.
I love books. I love the feel of them, the smell of them. I can highlight them. I just love it.
That's exactly what I do. I have everything highlighted, so it's and bunny-eared, Oh, I love doing all that. But yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of a book. You can curl up, by the fireplace and actually read something like this, and it's so enlightening. It transcends everything beyond this world we live in. So yeah, I do appreciate all the books that you write. And are you going to work on another one since you're cranking out material so quickly?
I've got a couple of things in mind. Probably the next one will be about the new children. I've been reading about all these incredible children, and I want to put them all in one book. How gifted they are. They're savants, they're geniuses, they're in music and math, just incredible. They're inventing things. They're just so incredible. And I just hope that, these children are not so influenced by, TV and everything else that's going on around them. I just want them to grow and to blossom like they are. Some of these children they're the new children. They're here to help us. They're here to teach us. They're here to raise the vibration of the earth. And they're a higher vibration. And each generation that's coming in will have a higher vibration.
Mm-hmm, right. Well, to me, it seems like television is becoming obsolete more and more. People are more interconnected onto the computers, iPhones, and things like that, which is, of course, a step prior to full speed ahead into transhumanism, which, you're taking all these beautiful beings, whatever they are, children or adults in Star Family, and actually interfacing them with, quote unquote, an artificial intelligence design created by mankind versus off-world species. So that's going to be different. So it'll be different to see, like maybe 100, 200 years from now, what everything looks like. And what people look like, because I'm seeing what people are looking at when they have visions of extraterrestrials. I actually think they're seeing their future selves, to be honest with me, or you rather.
I think so.
I really think they are. I think that's what's going on. I think they're tapping into something way beyond the spectrum. But yeah, I think that's great if you write a book about the children and all the things that are going on here with children being activated and very old souls coming in onto the timeline. That's kind of interesting right there.
I'd like to diss on TV for a minute.
Go
Have you
ahead.
watched some of these things? It's all violence, it's bloody,
Mm.
it's dark, everything. There's all this supernatural occult stuff that they're showing on TV, and that affects children. It's got to. And we wonder why children pick up guns and shoot people, in malls and things like that because of what's being shown on TV. We're so programmed, we don't realize that we are being mind controlled. And you know about that.
Oh yeah, I know all
Yeah.
about that artificial intelligence bug.
Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is, I mean, you have all these people. Yeah, they're getting swept away into the television, but at the same time, take a look at the internet and YouTube, and you'll see not necessarily YouTube per se, but go ahead and just look at regular news feeds and look at the violence across the world right now. Look at the
Oh,
savagery. I mean, people don't
oh,
have any respect for life force. I mean, they don't
no.
understand there's a soul in a body or a spirit in a body. They think it's just a suit. I don't get it, but there's definitely some real weirdness going on the world, and I think a lot of that, yeah, stems from people being desensitized and just being, whether it's being programmed by television or something else. Yeah, it's definitely showing its fangs.
I agree with you. And I think they've forgotten that there is karma. A lot of the world does believe in reincarnation, and there are those that don't. But I believe for every action, there is another reaction. And if there are always consequences in this life or the next. People think that the harm that they do to animals, and I see this all the time, dogs and cats being abused or killed.
It's horrible. Yeah.
I know, I just cry when I see that. Even cattle, the way they're treated. Here, I wrote about it in the book. There is a law called the Ag-Gag law. Have you heard of that?
I think I have, where they can't disclose what's going on inside of those slaughterhouses.
Right,
Yeah.
right. They had a group of people that came in and went to a farm here, one of the big farms, cattle dairy farms, and they took photos of, or they videoed these workers actually abusing these cattle, beating them and doing all kinds of things, horrible things to them, and they posted it. And so now they've got a law that you can be fined up to $5,000 or be imprisoned for it for a short time. But still, that's, how do we stop it if you can't do that? I mean, that's ridiculous. Animals don't have rights. It comes down to that. Animals do not have rights. And I think they should have rights. They can't speak up for themselves.
Well, they
They
speak a
can't.
different language, but
They
they're
do.
intelligent energy, their consciousness.
They do.
They contain spiritual energy and consciousness. Yeah, they're just like anything else. Just like dolphins are extremely intelligent. I mean, you're dealing with like the whales and cetaceans,
Right.
extremely advanced beings, and yet they're being slaughtered. I mean, you see that going on too, right? So, I mean, no respect for life force. And once again, you get what you give. And if you keep giving out that kind of a negative tactical assault, you're going to wind up having nothing, because there's no place to go.
Exactly.
There's no evolution, and there's no ascension process, because everything becomes toxicity. It's just. But I think it's when good people do nothing is when we have a world like this, and people
Right.
like us, beings like us, who know and really want to stand up and be counted, whether it's through spiritual enlightenment or whatever it is that we want to present to the world. I think it's important to do that. At least we can say we tried. At least we can say we were
Right.
here on the
Yes.
timeline trying to awaken
Yes.
people. That's all I can do. Can't
Yes.
push it in. I can't shove it down their throats, but I can literally try to awaken people. And so can
Yeah.
you. And I think what you're doing, your books are beautiful, and your presence
Thank
is
you.
just like
Thank
your energy
you.
field. I
Aw.
love communicating with you. You're a
Thank you
wonderful
so
light being.
much.
Yeah, no, I mean this.
Oh, well, so are you.
Well, thank you. I'm a little more jaded than you, but
Well,
I try. But
you know, um, Corbin said to everyone that he used to be shy, and he called it, I used to be behind the bush. I didn't want to speak out about all these things that are going on. He was protesting against all the nuclear testing in Nevada and trying to stop that, and knowing that it goes into our aquifers, the radiation and everything. But he said it's time for all of us to speak up, to get out from behind the bush and start talking again. We've got to tell people what we think. And, I'll give you an example here. It was a couple of years ago. There is a farm that I drive by once in a while, and I noticed during the winter these horses were standing in about a foot of mud, cold mud, in the small little pen. They were never moved. And I thought, that's animal abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I called, the Humane Society here in Boise, and they said, sorry, we don't handle that. We can't do anything about it. There's been a lot of complaints about this guy. So I thought, okay, well, I went to the next step, and I can't remember what it was, agricultural something or other. And they said, sorry, we can't do anything either.
Jeez,
I said,
why?
what? Excuse me? Why? Now, this is before the ag gag law was passed, but they said, no, he can sue us if we get on his ranch or do anything,
Not when it's
on
an
his
abuse.
property.
It's illegal, though. I mean, if you're abusing somebody, that's a crime. That's a criminal offense, in my opinion.
For a human, but
But
not
even
for an
animal. Oh, that's horrible. That's just terrible.
I know.
This is where it all needs to change. I mean, literally.
Yeah.
So
I feel like I tried, but I felt so helpless, and I thought, what can we do? We've got to start talking to our, representatives, say that's wrong.
mm-hmm.
Animals should have rights too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know what it is too, Betsy? I don't think the system works anymore. It's just broken so bad that I don't think it can be repaired. So it doesn't even matter at this point in the continuum what you do, or what you say, or who you try to contact, or who you elect into office. I mean, it's so corrupted that it just needs to go. In my opinion, we need to resurrect a new society. I'm not talking New World Order, but we need to do something else, because this is not working. And it's not working. It's not in the highest good for anybody's evolution. It's not in the highest good for anything. I mean, when you see this much evil taking place, and abuse, and physical abuse, and verbal abuse, and manipulation, and the bad things that they're doing here in the name of quote unquote whatever God with a little g, or corporation, which equivalent, it's the same thing. It's no good anymore. It has to change. Right. So maybe this is the Earth's way with these warnings that we're seeing, with Earth changes and everything else. Maybe this is the Earth's way of saying, hey, you guys, that's it, man. It's over.
Yeah,
time to change. Time to either get with the program, go to the next level, or go extinct. I mean, which one is it going to be?
Yeah. Human up out there, everybody.
Because it's really just like, man, I mean, they do need to step up. A lot of people need to step up. And I think what's most disappointing to me is that the people in the illusion of power have not stepped up the way they should be as multidimensional beings, and people who are representing a universal consciousness versus this linear deception game that's going on. But I don't think we're going to see that unless someone like us goes in there and starts running for office.
Oh, well, our leaders are so corrupt anyway, like you said. It's a joke,
Yeah, it's too
They're
far
puppets.
gone.
Yeah,
it's too far gone.
It is. And we allow it. Maybe we have nothing to do. I guess when we vote, it really doesn't mean anything, because the ones that they want in get elected anyway. And, it's just... it's amazing what's going on in our planet. I just wake up and think, maybe I'm in a bad nightmare, and maybe I'm going to wake up one of these days. It's just a bad nightmare, it's over.
Sliders episode. It'll be okay tomorrow, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You're now in the Twilight Zone.
Certainly feels that way. Well, we can change. As well as I do, that multidimensional space and consciousness is everywhere. We can change everything. I mean, we can go by intent. And once people understand how their mind works, they can literally do anything. They can heal their bodies and do wonderful, fabulous things. But of course, that's education, and it's moving to the next level, which of course I think a lot of people are kind of stuck. There's too much inertia. But I think this planet will force them into another level, or onto another level of their own blueprint, whatever that's going to take, whatever form it's going to take. So it'll be quite a ride to see that happening here. Now, you did touch on the indigenous people were they given technological help from star beings? That's your impression, or no?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So.
Yeah,
I think so. I think many of them, like the Australian Aboriginals, remember that they came from another planet, another solar system, somewhere out there, and because something was happening to their planet. And so many of these tribes, I think these legends, they're not myths. They're actual, stories, true stories handed down for thousands and thousands of years. And they knew where they came from. They're so different. Look at the Aboriginals. They're so different from any other race on this planet. They're amazing people. They have the dream time, which is really about other times, past, present, and future. They can go into the future, the past. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they do understand consciousness without a doubt. And it's interesting because I like the storytelling aspect of it, where they have elders and they communicate the data from ancestors, from one to the next. And I find that to be very nice, because That's the way to preserve information, if you ask me. History has proven to us, and the illusion of that textbooks have been censored and edited. People were murdered for information. So I guess having the information within and then transferring it to someone who's trustworthy is really the way to go to some degree.
I think we are so conditioned to believe that when we die, that's it. But the indigenous people know that their ancestors still exist, and they honor them all the time in ceremony, and they speak to them as if they were right there because they know they're right there.
Yep.
Nothing dies in
Exactly.
this world. It goes to something else. It changes into something else.
Absolutely. It just goes from one space to the next. It's like crossing from one room to the next. Yeah.
Exactly.
And of course, there's always that access too. I mean, we can communicate with anyone who's transferred out. And I know you know this because of your sister, who apparently stays in touch with you now and then, right?
She does, and she's still doing it. We both, my husband and I, excuse me, we sometimes try and explain everything away, that some of the things that are happening with our stereo radio that keeps going off, it goes off at certain times, and we thought, well, it does have a timer on it. Maybe that's it. And we've tried to clear it, I don't know how many times. And then it will go off on certain times in the morning, and then it'll stop. Mm-hmm. The next day it won't do it.
That's interesting.
So it's either possessed, but I think it's my sister, because this whole activity started 2 years ago. It was on the July 9th that it started 2 years ago, and I had a dream of my sister, and she told me that she was going to have a surprise birthday party for me. And I kept telling her in the dream that it's not my birthday, Kathy, it's not my birthday. And she says, oh, yes, it is. And I woke up to the dream. It was so real. And when you have dreams like that are so real, lifelike, that your ancestors, your family, your relatives that have passed on, they're right there. They are there communicating with you in your dream world. But later that morning, I found out that my granddaughter had a baby, had given birth to a little baby boy. So my sister was telling me, she loved birthdays, she loved holidays, and she was celebrating his birth.
Nice.
Wasn't it beautiful?
Yeah. Well, they definitely interact, without a doubt. I mean, that's the funny thing. And then when I look at that aspect of it, say that those who have transferred out by the law of grace, and then those who have been tragically, taken early, you look at the haunting aspects of it. And obviously they didn't get to resolve anything on the earth, or maybe they were taken out or murdered. The horrific things that are going on right now across the planet where people are being murdered, you have to ask yourself what's happening to those disembodied spirits, because in my opinion, when they leave that tragically, there's going to be a haunting effect.
Mm-hmm.
So
there is, you're right. And I think we need to get our brooms out and clean up the astral planes, because I think they're pretty polluted out there too.
I laugh, but truly it is. Yeah, when people say they want to astral travel, I'm like, really? You sure? I mean, there are many levels to it, but still, man, it's very interesting out there. Have you done a lot of astral traveling?
I've done a little bit. Oh. I've tried it. I've done remote viewing, which I actually saw Mars. I was at JPL it was so dreamy. It wasn't a dream, but it was just so lifelike. I was right there with these scientists when they were watching what was on Mars, and they were seeing these giant formations up there, three-sided pyramids. There was one I called the ramp, this great big ramp type of thing. There was a spiral. And I know I was there. This was when one of the first probes had gone up to Mars, and I had watched all this. And what's really strange is some friends, when I was living in Los Angeles, I was invited to a dinner, and they had a guy that claimed he worked for NASA as a computer tech. And he told me, I started telling him what I had seen in my dream or remote viewing. And he said, how did you know that? And I said, I don't know. He said, well, it's true. You saw it. And he confirmed it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great.
And what's really strange is he disappeared from the the friends that had invited us over for dinner, they never heard from him again. So I hope he didn't get in trouble for it.
Wow, how interesting. They tend to do that, don't they? They come and go.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very well. They get creeped out, but the bottom line is, there are no secrets in the universe, and when you're advanced in consciousness, you can access anything. Which means we can also decode what they're doing, and if they're manipulating or deceiving or airbrushing, then we can actually see beyond that spectrum. I don't think they get that yet, but there are a lot of us here who can actually see. We're like the watchers. We can actually see what they're doing, and that's just through intelligent design. That's through higher consciousness. I mean, that's the gift. That's the beauty of the universe. It gives us these beautiful gifts.
I want to ask you about what you think. I keep hearing about a lot of younger people getting into occult things.
Well,
occult magic, sciences,
Well, you're talking to somebody who's
scares
a
me.
crafter. I mean, that's my background too. Of course, mysticism in general, but they have to be clear in consciousness when they're involved in that, because you can pull in lower astral entities, disembodied spirits. You have to know what you're doing. I think a lot of people right now, and I can tell you just in the craft, I'll use that as an example. There are many books out there that are literally misleading them and trapping them, and the rituals are actually designed for the magician who created that book. In other words, if somebody takes that book and tries to work with it, they're going to get trapped. You have to be very careful when you're using any type of mystical work, occult work. You have to understand it from a multiversal perspective. And for me, the more I evolve into it, I mean, I studied all these areas. I've been very advanced in a lot of different areas of mysticism. But what I've done is transcend everything to the highest level, because what I've realized is that everything is energy, and you cannot be pulling in disembodied things or things that will manipulate you or attack you, things that are not productive in your consciousness. I mean, that happens. So I do think that kids, especially young ones who are impressionable, will be pulled in and swayed to things that are probably not in the highest good for them. They need teachers. They need spiritual teachers. And once again, there are no role models out there. Everybody's doing a dance of Illuminati. They're not really Illuminati. They use the pyramid and the eye, and they think that they're Illuminati because they use that symbol. That's not true. I mean, this is what cracks me up. I mean, they're using these symbols as power. These are powerful symbols, yes, but the people that are using them are not. So it's kind of like they're using them to create an effect. They're using it for a trigger, effect. So I look at it from a different perspective. But maybe that answered your question a little bit. But you have to be very, you have to work with it on a very high level. That's all.
That's right. Yeah.
It's like everything else. Yeah.
And I don't, like you said, they don't understand what they're getting into. They're getting into a lot of the dark occult, and they think that maybe they can do something to somebody because they bullied them or something like that, and it's going to come right back at you. They don't realize it. Well, it is.
I mean, there's self-defense, and I'm all for self-defense. I mean, if somebody's attacking you, you have a right to defend yourself. I don't care if it's on the astral plane or on the physical plane. You have a right to defend and protect your space, so to speak. But if you're just launching attacks at people, and I know there are people out there who do this, and even the weaponization of technology is a perfect example of this. If you're just going after people just for your own entertainment, that's wrong, and that's going to hit you in the butt. It will. May not hit them on this timeline, but it's going to hit them, and when it does, it's going to be horrible. So I can tell you that much. But I mean, with all the work that I've done on this timeline in my own personal experience, it's always been about DNA activation and healing work. It's never been about trying to control, manipulate. So when I was pulled into those covert programs, it was really an awakener, because I saw what they were doing in the weaponization of mysticism and the weaponization of the paranormal and spirituality, and I was like, wow, this has to be. We have to talk about this. People need to know about this. So yeah, it's huge. Don't want to poison it.
Didn't we talk about the Pope at one time? What do you think of the Pope? He seems to be.
I don't have any comment on him.
He's made some interesting, different things. He wants to meet with the Dalai Lama, which is good. That's a good thing. And, he's just made some really different type of comments. But, I think the one thing that hasn't really been addressed is all the abuse, the sexual abuse that's gone on in the church.
It's corrupted.
Yeah.
That's the whole problem, is it's a corrupted program. I call it a program now, because, I mean, the people that attend the church, they're pure of heart. They don't know what's going on, and they're manipulating those people. Unfortunately, they're using God with a little g. They're using themselves as the middleman between them and the next level of spirituality, which is wrong. I think eventually it's going to hit them in the butt once again. I think that there have been too many decades of control manipulation based on belief systems and false belief systems, and an entanglement where there is no truth in what they're teaching anymore, or sincerity. I mean, you can't sit there and preach goodness when you're not a good person. That's just the bottom line. You have to walk the walk. And these people are not doing that. So I did hear that too. I think he turned the Dalai Lama away once. And remember when I told you I laughed because I said, "Oh, I see. He has time for Angelina Jolie, but he doesn't have time for the Dalai Lama." I thought,
yeah,
what's going on with
of
that,
course.
Right? So I thought it was really strange.
Too funny.
Yeah, just the politics involved, and you see the politics playing out, of course, in the name of whatever. So yeah, I don't put much emphasis on them. I believe that they're part of the problem and not the solution. And I'm not just saying them in general, but I'm saying a lot of organized religion in general. I think the next level for people is consciousness and spirituality, and deprogramming themselves from their false belief systems, which is just pull them down into the gutter. I mean, we all know universal consciousness. When you're merged with Source in the full light universe, you know good from evil. You know how to treat your fellow man. You know how to treat animals and plants and people. I mean, it's a no-brainer once you're ascended in consciousness, and you don't get that through churches. You don't get that through that. I mean, I don't care what they tell you. It's a personal path. It's a spiritual path within.
Right now, there is so much fear out there. There's so much anger. There's so much negativity that's going into the planet. And what do you think? That's emotion. That's energy. What do you think that's doing to the planet, too? That's causing a lot of these earth changes. So everything that we're doing right now, if we come together and start thinking of love and compassion and giving and just loving each other, and I know that's hard, but we've got to do it. Or
I agree with you.
The earth is feeling it big time right now, and she's showing us her ferocity.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's coexistence. The bottom line is there are many species in off-world. I mean, there are many, many races out there. It's an infinite amount of races and intelligence and whatever you want to call them, extraterrestrials. I mean, we have all different species and different types of races. And I ask, why can't people get along here on this timeline, on this world? You have different religions, different races. Why can't people just step up and put like you said, put their differences aside and coexist? Coexisting is huge. If you could just coexist, then we can create some kind of a neutral stance here on this planet where there's where there's not any distortion and all these anomalies of abuse go away. But that's like it's going to take divine intervention for that. I
wonder if that the violence is in our DNA when you think about it. I mean, because man has always been violent.
I don't know about that. I mean, I don't come from a violent consciousness. I mean, I come from an advanced consciousness, or maybe that's because I'm just different. But I don't think everybody's violent. I believe people get frustrated and they get angry, and anger moves energy. Now, when you get into the violent mode, I believe that has a lot to do with conditioning, programming, and not necessarily DNA, but century after century of programming, which means false belief systems that have no connection to source or higher consciousness. So once you have lifetime after lifetime of no higher design work, then you're going to have this mentality and no connection to source. And I see that a lot with a lot of different races out there. I do on this timeline, on this world. So maybe that's what's going on for sure. It's just. Go ahead.
Yeah, or we could blame it on testosterone too.
Well, I guess, but I mean, I met good and evil everywhere. It doesn't matter what suit you're in.
No,
but I do think it's programming and conditioning throughout the centuries. I just think it's the way they've been brought up for century after century after century. I mean, you look at the Middle East for a perfect example. I mean, Dark Age mentality. When are they going to grow and evolve? I mean, with all the money, they have lots of money in Dubai, but they're still operating under false belief systems and programs and destructive sequences. So they're not connected to source. I don't care. This is where money doesn't buy you ascension. It doesn't buy you evolution and consciousness. You have to go there in your own internal design work, and you have to let go of the false belief systems. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with the listeners and you, but literally you guys all know that. So, but that's what needs to happen. And maybe we need to reiterate that into the ethers to make people understand that these are things that need to happen here in order to change the world for the better.
Supposedly at one time, females of the world had the power. We were in power of the world, and we misuse that power, and so it's all turned around, and now men have the power again. So there isn't that balance, that's that total balance that we need between men and women. And I think we've got to get back to that balance again, because everything is just off kilter. There's just
well, I don't know if women have abused the power. I don't have any recall of that on looking at timelines where women have abused the privilege of having access to power. What I've seen is high priestesses running and directing a lot of powerful energy onto this world, and dark priests manipulating and controlling. And if they couldn't control it, they would destroy the female. But you have to also realize, and I know you know this, and the listeners probably do, that the soul is an androgynous thing. We incarnate male and female many lifetimes over. So when you say you're prejudiced or against the color of a person or the sexual preference or whatever the sex of a person, that's really, it doesn't matter anymore because they're androgynous to begin with. And once again, once we learn consciousness and understand multidimensional consciousness, all this stuff starts to come into play. But I don't look at it as women did anything. Quite honestly, I think that the men I don't want to sound prejudiced, but I'm not. But I mean, there's been a lot of manipulation with males. You look at the Middle East as a perfect example of that. The disrespect they show, inexcusable things that are going on, and atrocities that are done to women and children. That's not okay. And I've addressed that many times on my show. But I will say that things need to change for the better on this world. We cannot keep this toxicity going and ramping up the way it is. It cannot be spiking up the planet. And when you see this world changing the way it is, it's the way the Earth is moving right now. Of course it's angry. I would be angry too. I mean, my goodness. This is why I said if I was the planet, you guys would be gone by now.
Right. She wants to survive. Absolutely.
Well, this planet is ascending, and we all know that because, everything's ascending in all points in the space-time continuum beyond the illusion of space and time. But still, I mean, we have to do something right now while we're here on the timeline to correct a course that's very much self-destruct. And I think that's what you're doing with your book, and obviously what you've been doing along the timeline, and that's what I do too. I mean, I'm here to represent the higher consciousness, not the lower astral debris. Although I address it, I won't look away from it.
Well, we live in a duality world, light, dark, hot, cold, male, female, negative, positive ions. It's that negative, positive poles.
Well, yeah. It's a polarization, but negative is not evil. There's a difference between a negative charge.
Isn't.
That's the thing.
We need that. I mean, we need that. We need the moon. We need the sun for light. Without the sun, we wouldn't exist. Without the moon, we wouldn't exist. So we need that duality here, and we need that balance. But when one thing is out of balance, then everything is out of balance.
Right. Well, it's like the chakra system in the body.
Right.
When one of your chakras is out, the rest of them can start to malfunction. Right. You know this. So, it's the same thing. Now, in one of your chapters for the fire element, you write about how our star, the sun, and how unique it is to our solar system. And what makes it so unique? I wonder if you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Well, most solar systems have two stars, and we only have one, which is our sun, which is very interesting. That's why people believe that Planet X is out there, and it's a brown dwarf, a failed star that seems to come through our area solar system every 3,600 years, and it's coming back, supposedly causing all these huge upheavals with the Earth right now, and it's going to get worse. It isn't going to hit us, of course, but it comes through, and that's why we're seeing all these meteors, these huge meteors coming into our atmosphere right now. With the Russian one that a couple of years ago that shattered glass and made the huge boom and injured people. That was part of it. It's bringing in all these asteroids. We've had tons of asteroids coming through our solar system and pretty close to Earth too lately. So it would make sense why all that's happening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot going on, and when I say rifts, they call it the Kali Rift, but there are other things that are happening, of course. And, when you look at it in a perspective of moving through like a black hole, just kind of moving through, navigating through towards the galactic center and beyond, I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking at insofar as timelines go. Everything seems to be ascending and moving very quickly and ramping up and vibrationally speaking, accelerating. And with that comes all this debris. It's like we're shaking off the mud on the tires as the car speeds up. It's that sort of thing is what I'm seeing. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, I do think that the key to our evolution is just being nice to each other and coexisting. I think that's the simplicity of it all, tuning into nature, tuning into each other, and having conversations, because people don't have conversations anymore. We've talked about that, I'm sure.
You're so right.
I mean, what happened?
It's texting, right?
Yeah, it's a lot easier. It's more evasive to be texting someone than to actually have a physical conversation or look them in the eye. So things have changed dramatically from when we were growing up. Things are very different now.
People used to shake hands. There were no contracts, It was your word was your honor, and that's what people lived by. But that's all ended.
Yeah, it's very much so ended. So what I call the electronic God phase is what we're going through right now, which means everything is about global surveillance and manipulation. I know it sounds like 1984, but that's what I'm seeing. And of course, you see it in terms of changes and other things, but I see it also dovetailing into that. So I suspect that will also fade out at some point in the continuum, but I do see it showing up, definitely.
I agree. I agree.
So it's just about having your own space, keeping your sacred space, and then trying to shine as much light onto your own life and to others' lives as you progress along the path. I think that's the biggest thing that we can do here while we're on this world. And of course, I like the affirmations you have, once again, like I said in your book. And what suggestions do you have for people? I mean, is it just about switching TVs off, or is it about something else deeper, insofar as really looking at it? Some people don't want to look in the mirror. They don't want to look into themselves. They
No,
don't
they
want to go
don't.
there because they don't like what they see. Maybe they haven't had or been good people or something. It's hard to look into yourself on
Right,
multidimensional levels. So what
right.
is your advice to them?
I would say start by loving yourself, honoring yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because you're a beautiful spiritual being and you have every right to be here and you were meant to be here. I mean, we all have a mission here in life and we all came here for a reason at this time to experience all these changes that are going on. And we're the ones that are going to change. We're the ones we've been waiting for.
Yep.
And, we can start with ourselves. And from there, we can do ceremony. We can talk to the earth again. What I love what the Dalai Lama said. He says, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. Now think about that.
That's cute.
But it's true. I mean, we all have a place where we can do so much. And when we all start doing something, we create this wave and it gets bigger and, it grows and more. I mean, even with what we eat, if we start getting into more organic things, where we're going to make the manufacturers, take all these toxic things out of everything that we're using or eating. And that will be a start, when you get away from the sulfates, all the other things that are in there that get into biodegradable products,
Mm-hmm.
using cleaners that don't hurt the environment, because it's all going back into the earth. You got to think it's going back into our water. It's going back into the earth. Just start getting into more natural things. Hair products, that's toxic. If you can get away with it, I know we all do it. All of us women, we like to change our hair,
And
but
the men.
yeah, well, men do it too.
Mhm.
But recycle plastic. I go to the park over here and I think, what is wrong with people? They're throwing their plastic things. And I've gotten after the city. I said, why don't you have a container for plastic?
Mhm.
Well, that would be just too much. We can't do it. I'm going, excuse me?
That can't
You know,
word again. Is it can't or won't? Which one is it really?
well,
No?
they say they can't do it,
Yeah.
but they won't do it. That's the problem,
That's the problem. That is the
Yeah.
biggest problem we're facing
Uh-huh.
right now on the timeline.
Right.
We are in a position where we can change the world overnight for the better, but nobody's willing to
Mm,
step up and do that in the illusion of power, who has access and control to do so. They don't want to, or
right.
they would
And
have done it already.
when I was growing up, there weren't the plastics. We didn't have plastic bags
Hmm.
for our trash. We
Right?
used paper.
Right?
Or we just threw it in the trash can and then took it out, for the garbage collector.
Hmm.
And now we've got all this plastic containers. Everything is in plastic. And of course, that plastic is leaching into our food, into our water.
Hmm.
Get into glass if you can, get as much glass. Use glass. I mean, that's great. It's recyclable. It goes back into the earth. It breaks down. But plastics take hundreds of years to break down. And I think about the diapers. Oh my God.
Mm.
I know it's so convenient for all the young mothers out there that have babies. But, I remember when we used cloth diapers, and, there are services that take care of that now.
Mhm. Right?
And just think of all these diapers that are in the, you know, in the earth now, that in these landfills. It's
Right?
just unconscionable to
Yeah.
me what we're doing and what we're putting out there. I think about the cars. My husband and I were driving down the street the other day, and I see all these cars, these dealerships, hundreds of cars that are sitting there. Now, there's no way that everybody can buy a new car out there. What are they doing with all these cars? I mean, that's in every city, every town.
Right?
Um, yeah,
Yep. Too much stuff, quote unquote
too
stuff,
much stuff, too much material stuff. And like I said, we're a throwaway society. If it has a tear in it, dump it.
Mhm.
Throw it in the trash.
Yep. It's
We're
all about
not like
convenience.
Yeah. The one thing that I have read about the indigenous people, they said if something horrific happens to the earth, we're talking about a major cataclysm, they're the ones that are going to survive because we don't know how to survive. We, we're so we're so cityfied that we don't know how to, to live, how to live off the earth, how to communicate with the earth. And I think that's something that we all need to learn because sooner or later, something's going to happen. Something's got to give.
I agree. Well, there's a difference between living and existing, and I
Right,
think right now everybody's just existing. They're working for a
right.
paycheck. They're trying to survive. They're paying their bills. Everything's escalated and inflated, and they're living a miserable life. And their escape is through television, entertainment, alcohol,
Mhm.
drugs,
Right,
medication. That's really what it boils down to, folks. I mean, that's really what's
right.
happening here. So it's a choice. I mean, it's literally we have free will. We do have free will,
Mhm,
even though it doesn't
mhm.
seem like we do sometimes on this timeline. And of course, they're
Right,
encroaching on that each day. Each day you're seeing the free will getting kind of corralled, but we still
right,
have it, and there's no reason why people
right.
can't make the change. But I think it's all about instant gratification and convenience.
It is.
I
We're
grew up the way
lazy.
you did. I mean, we didn't have all those nice little cutesy
No,
things when I was growing up.
no,
So,
no. And think of the pioneers that they would walk for miles and miles. The weather,
right,
just horrific time for them. They had the elements, they had animals to deal with, wild animals, they had, Indians attacking them or whatever, but still they survived.
right.
And we don't know how to do that. I mean, they had to cook from scratch. Now we stick things in the microwave. We don't know how to cook from scratch. Most people, I know there are some great cooks out there, but most of us just want the convenience. I mean,
Right.
we've gotten lazy.
Yeah, they've gotten
We
complacent a little
have.
bit right there. Well, and I'm a firm believer that the body can acclimate to dimensional frequencies in different spaces too. And with everything that's changing on this world, it seems like people are getting calibrated to this noxious atmosphere, so to speak. I mean, we're all getting calibrated to the GMOs, calibrated, but it's not healthy. And it's like eating
Right,
sawdust. I mean, honestly, it may not affect you right now on this timeline. It might not affect you for a year or two, or maybe who knows? But eventually it will because you're not
right,
getting nutrients. And of course,
right.
everything is what I call dead energy. It's not
It is.
there's nothing there anymore. I
No,
used to call them dead zones too, like dead zones across the planet where you have dead space. I can go into a forest and I can tell you what's alive and what's not. I can walk around and see the dead zones versus the ones that are still breathing and consciousness oriented. I mean, it's amazing to me to see this happening across the board. And of course, people are
mm,
falling into that category as well.
right, right. And, I think when I was growing up, I don't remember anybody having cancer. Any of the students that any of my classmates, nobody had cancer. I mean, it was like elderly people got cancer, but
Right.
not children. But look at all the children now dying of cancer or have all different kinds of cancers. I've never seen anything. Autism.
Yeah, their bodies are
It's,
completely
yeah,
rejecting their environment completely.
right.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot going on here. And I think that it would be nice if you'd like to offer or actually communicate one of your prayers from your books. Would you like to
Oh,
share one of
okay.
those?
Yeah, let me find
I
one
think that
real
would be
quick here.
nice because, yeah, just kind of shift gears a little bit and put some,
Oh,
some more
okay,
positive vibes out
sure.
there. They're
I think
beautiful.
we, thank you. Um, well, here's a prayer that's the author is unknown, but it's a wind prayer. It says, "O great spirit, whose voice I hear in the winds, and whose breath gives life to the entire world, hear me. I am small and weak, and I need your strength and wisdom. Let me walk in beauty, and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things you have made, and my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may understand the things you have taught my people. Let me learn the lessons you have hidden in every leaf and rock, and seek strength not to be greater than my brother, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me always ready to come to you with clean hands and straight eyes, so when life fades, as the fading sunset, my spirit may come to you without shame. Aho.
Beautiful. That's so pretty.
Isn't that nice?
It's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you, as well as the other indigenous grandmothers, Native American elders, and many indigenous peoples of the world. Now, you talk a little bit about foreseeing a time of great upheaval for the earth. Obviously, that seems like it's right now on this timeline, or a time of purification. How do you
Mhm.
define purification?
Well, the Hopis talk of this time is purification times. And they say that there's going to be a great cleansing of the earth. But they talk about, they have a sacred boulder called the Prophecy Rock, which displays a timeline of coming events. At one point, the timeline splits. One branch of the line stands for one-hearted people, and at the end of the line is a drawing of a man holding a staff and a flower representing life and happiness. The other branch of the line represents the path of the two-hearted people, the path of the people who live only by the laws of materialism and technology. So the figures on the branch are depicted with their heads separated from their bodies. And that branch dwindles off and breaks off into chaos and fades away. Just after these two lines split, there is a line that connects the two lines one more time. That line represents the short time we have left to choose the path we will follow. So what they're saying is we can change the outcome, what we're headed for. I mean, we're like a train on a track, and we're headed for disaster right now, but we can switch it to another track. We can get on a better track, and we can change everything. I believe that. I mean, we have the power. I believe that we have the mental power, we have the spiritual power. If we come together, we work together, and each one of us, you can start by maybe having, little ceremonies. You don't have to do it the indigenous way. You don't have to have a sweat lodge. You don't have to have a powwow. You don't have to have a vision quest. You can just go out there and do your own ceremonies and
right, and
honor
prayer.
Earth.
I mean, any kind of prayer. When you're pure of heart, it doesn't matter what you believe.
Right.
If your intention is pure, and you know that, I know that, the listeners know that, then things happen and magic happens. The universe accommodates it. If you have malicious intent, that's not going to work. And I'm sure people understand that as well. But I think that's true. I mean, it's just taking your power back and tuning in. That's beautiful right there. And it brings forth so many different types of beings and energy. This is really nice to listen to that and remind people through this busyness of this world that maybe you should take some time out and just kind of reset your batteries, reset your design, what you want to do, where you want to go. I mean, are you happy with what you're doing from day to day? I ask people that all the time. I mean, is this where you guys want to be? Is that where you want to live? Do you want to live in the false matrix? Are you getting sucked down from your job? Is it a gravity well? I mean, then you're living to survive, but you're not really living in experiencing consciousness. I mean, what's wrong with this,
it's kind of interesting. People think that we don't have the power, but during 9/11, when that happened and the first plane hit, there were two satellites up there, GOES 8 and it was called GOES 10, and they showed a spike in the geomagnetic energy of Earth. I mean, it spiked so large, and then after the second one, it spiked even greater. So you know that mass human energy consciousness out there, we have an effect on the Earth. And
that makes perfect sense.
It does.
It's an interface. It's a natural interface when it comes down to it. Well, of course, they feed off of that too. Of course, when there's a crisis, they'll feed off of the trauma and the negativity. There are a lot of parasitic energies that do that, and of course, underground cabals and things like that too. But yeah, I mean that was a timeline that was very weird and foreboding, and it seems to me like ever since 9/11 that things have changed drastically. And things were swept away. And I remember that energetic field. I mean, I remember the day. And I will tell you, I think you had some premonitions, if I'm not mistaken, but I certainly did. I did. I mean, that day, that morning, I woke up, and I was doing land surveying with my husband at the time. That was his profession. And we were land surveyors. And I told him, I said, there's so much hate in the atmosphere. It was like a static of negative energy. I couldn't even define it for you. But it felt like hatred. It felt like heat and friction, and it felt really negative. And I kept telling him, I was like, you feel this hatred, this energy in the atmosphere? And he was kind of not tuned into it, but I could certainly feel it. And then I had to go to the doctors, not to make a long story short, but I had to run to the doctors. And on the way over there, going down the road, I heard something say, and this was before I was interfaced with the artificial intelligence, saying, get off the road. And literally that was right around the time when this whole thing happened. But I wasn't even close to the area because I was in another state. Wow. But just to give you an idea that something was wrong, look ahead, get off the road. This is spirit telling you what's happening. This is whatever you want to call guardians of light, higher consciousness, ascended mastery, whatever you want to call it, your higher self. There's something to it, without a doubt. And I don't have to tell you that at all.
Oh, right. I felt it. I had a dream of 9/11 the year before it happened, and it was very symbolic, but I didn't understand it at the time. with a giant apple tree being sucked down into the ground straight down. And of course, New York is known as the Big Apple. I didn't I didn't understand that, but it was so frightening and scary. I knew something was going to happen. I felt it, like you said, it was in the, it was in the ethers out there.
Right, you tune into it as a natural psychic. And I'm sure you keep a diary, or did you keep a diary and a vision log of the things that were going on?
I have kept one. I haven't done it lately. I used to keep a copy of all my dreams, and I haven't. I've been bad.
Well, I used to do also, and I'll tell you what, every single one of the things that I saw came true. And I looked at it like maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, and then all of a sudden it's just right there. It's like I was looking at timelines, but all of it came to pass. And of course, when you have experiences like that, you kind of log them and then you just let it go. That's what I do anyway. I don't hold on to anything, and I just don't give it much credibility until all of a sudden I look back and I'm like, wow, this is right, this is right, this is right. And you're doing this checklist.
Right, cool. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think right now it's so important for all of us to trust our intuition, and anybody that thinks they don't have intuition, you do. We all have it. And I think once we start writing down our dreams, that's a great way to do it. Keep a log of it. Just if you get a feeling, and women are really good at this, men kind of second guess their intuition. I don't know, maybe sometimes ego gets in the way, but they don't want to trust it. But women are more intuitive, I think, because we trust what we feel. We believe that there's more out there, and maybe it's because we have children, we have to be intuitive. But
they're also very receptive to the feminine.
Right.
The divine feminine is very very much a receiver and a transmitter too, but still there's a lot of receptivity. Right. Energetically speaking, the mother energy,
Right.
Sure.
And just start trusting that intuition, and trust what the animals are telling you. If your animals are acting really weird, your pets, they're telling you something's going to happen. Before a big earthquake, a lot of animals run away from home. You'll see that, the Humane Society, whoever, the local pound shelter has all these cats and dogs that, ran away from home during that time. They feel the vibration of the earth because that, all 4 paws are on the ground all the time. They feel that geomagnetic energy changing.
And their ears, they pick up on it. They
hear things. Sure, absolutely. They hear it. And before the 2004 earthquake in Indonesia, it was interesting that all these animals were running away from the coastal areas. Elephants, there were birds that were flying away from the area. But humans, they saw the water back out of the coves. They went down there, and of course the tsunamis came rushing in, tsunami water, and they died. There was like 230,000 people that died.
Right.
Because they didn't trust their intuition. But the native people that lived on some of these islands off of these areas knew what was going to happen. They went to higher ground and they survived. So
they were tuned
trust
in.
your intuition. We got a human up out there.
Right. Well, I call it spiritual up, but yeah, definitely tune into the higher octaves and figure out what you're supposed to be doing here. It's that psychic radar that will save everybody on the timeline without a doubt. And of course, there's a lot of interference and panic that happens during times where cataclysmic events happen, of course, and changes like that. But, we're getting ready to wrap this up pretty soon, plus or minus, but I did want to thank you again, Betsey, for being on tonight. This has been great to have you. And I wish you all the best of this, best of luck with this book, Earth Energy, Return to Ancient Wisdom.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's awesome. And if you haven't checked out the cover, everybody, check it out. It's totally cool. Really,
I was surprised. I got my copy today too, my first copy.
Did you really?
Yeah. And, of course, when you see it in person, you go, oh my goodness, it really did come out great.
Yeah. Isn't it exciting when you get your book? I love that feeling. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. And if
it's always a delight to be on your show. You're just wonderful.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. I know we kind of go into different areas. So, we start talking and then everything goes everywhere. But nonetheless,
but it's kind of cool. We cover a lot of subjects.
It's a real conversation. And,
it is.
We have a lot of other things going on too. But if people want to get in touch with you, obviously they can do that through your own website. So let's give them a reminder of how they can do that, and also touch base with your own radio show that you still do, right?
Oh yeah, right. My website is betseylewis.com, and Betsey's spelled a little bit different. It's BETSEY Betseylewis.com. And my Earth News One blog, I put everything that's going on, anything that I'm feeling, earthquakes or anything on that blog, and that's on my website. So just click on that. UFO reports, anything that's going on with the sun, because the sun affects what's going on the planet with earthquakes and everything. There is that connection. So be sure and check it out. I've got a lot of different things on there. And also my radio show is Rainbow Vision, and that's blogtalkradio.com/Rainbow Vision. And I usually have that on Wednesdays. I was supposed to have a show this Wednesday, but my next show is on the 11th. And so just check that out.
You and those master numbers, Betsy.
I know. I love them.
I always remind you.
13, 11, I know.
7, 33. Yeah. Well, it has been awesome. And we still have about 3 minutes plus or minus here. But I do want to make sure, thank you everybody for tuning in tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. And stay tuned for Dr. J with Researcher on a Mission coming up next on the Dark Matter Radio Network. And of course, when you touch base, I don't know if we can cover this because we have a few minutes here, but the timeline splits or the dimensional split you're talking about, it sounds to me like a dimensional split when the elders are talking about this split that's coming. Is that what you see also, the line splitting? Is that meaning a dimensional split?
I think so. I think
that's what it sounds like.
They were saying that we're going to go from the fourth world into the fifth world. I think that is a dimensional shift. Mm-hmm. I do believe that. That's
what I'm seeing. But what I'm also seeing is because we're multidimensional and because this planet's multidimensional, it goes way beyond the fourth and the fifth. So to me, it seems like something else is going to be happening. But I still think it has to do with when that happens, when those splits happen, in my opinion, people need to be vibrating at the right resonance wave and frequency in order to merge with the right dimensional split. Now, that's huge. And that's why we talk about raise your vibration, we use that through spirituality and meditation. What's your impression of that?
I think so. I don't think we're going to be saved by ETs. I think there will be guidance, but I don't think we're going to be beamed aboard or anything like that. I do feel that, we've gone through many dimensional changes. The Earth has gone through many upheavals, and that vibration, if the Earth shifts, if the poles actually shift, I mean, that's going to be huge. The vibrational change is going to be massive. Mm-hmm. And it's going to affect so many people. And it's already shifting. Magnetic north is already moving. Very quickly, from what I understand as well. And then we have the magnetic field supposedly collapsing, or at least getting very, very weak, which tells me that the spin's going to stop at some point in the continuum. Or maybe our moon will break orbit. I don't know what your impression is of that. Have you ever seen anything like that? I've seen some strange things up in the sky, but I know the Eskimos in the Arctic in the last few years have noticed they are outside all the time. They said the sun does not set in the same place anymore and the stars are not in the same place. So they know something is happening to our planet, that it's wobbling in space. That's very fascinating to me. Isn't it? Yeah, when you start looking at the snapshot of the stars and the planets and seeing that things are changing in the dynamic. So it's basically what their perception is from looking at the Earth from there. It's very fascinating. Well, Betsy, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you again. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great week, everybody.